Today we're doing 8 tools for under $10. So I started at Uptown Thrift and went to a couple of places around town and was able to find a handful of different tools. So I didn't film a bunch in the stores just for privacy of other people, but I was able to find a handful of things, and I'll go over how much they were and what I was thinking about when I bought them. First up is this 15-cent pair of tongs. I think they'd be great for marbles. Next is this 10-cent butter knife for carving. Next is this 20-cent knife, also for detail work and carving. I liked this one because it had a sharp edge and serrated, so not only making defined lines but also detail work. Flat nose tweezers are amazing for sculpting. Needle nose are great, they can get into small spaces. These reverse tweezers, I use them every single day, not even gonna lie. And these angled needle nose will be great for doing decorative work. So the first tool that we're going to try out are the metal tongs. And I thought it would be a good idea to use for marbles, so I've made about 3/4 of a marble. I'm doing a hot seal on one side, wiggling it, just kind of making sure it's nice and centered. Then I'm going to pull off the excess color from the opposing side where we have gathered our color from. I'm now going to take that excess and I'm going to melt it into the shoulder that we've created between where we have gathered and where we have pulled away. I'm going to melt it down into the new face of this marble. And once it's all nice and smooth, then I'm going to go into my marble mold and I'm just going to round it out. And as you can see here, I've let that set up for just a second. I'm not putting it directly into the marble mold while it's molten hot. I've waited a couple seconds and allowed it to set on the outside. So here I'm going to be heating up my metal tweezers and realizing, oops, I have a hot seal on the opposite side. So it's actually going to be kind of hard to get that off. So instead of doing that, I'm going to add a cold seal to one side, take the hot seal off the other side, and then make it a way easier and way more efficient way to take it off of the handle and get it into the metal tongs. I'm rounding it off, making it nice and smooth, making sure our marble rolls. And now that I have a cold seal, I'm gonna warm up my tongs. I don't wanna shock the glass. Put it in the tongs and just simply tap and release. And then I'm gonna go in and remove my puntee mark. And it's a finished marble. So for the next item that we're going to be making, I'm actually going to be using 3 of the tools. So we're going to be making a leaf pendant, and I'm going to gather back a ball of glass. I'm going to heat it up, press it in between my mashers, make it nice and flat. I want a puck of glass, and then I'm going to grab my butter knife, the one with the wooden handle, and then I will heat up one side of the puck. It'll be the face of the leaf pendant, and I'm going to add score lines into it. And you'll be able to see I'm going down the middle and then down the side at I believe it would be a 35-degree angle. And I'm going to do that on both sides of the initial line that we put down the middle of the puck that we created. So this is what it looks like once you're done carving. So what I like to do is I like to go in and just kind of round out the side where, like the edge where I have put that cut into the glass. And I just think it makes it look a little bit nicer, a little bit more clean. You don't have to do that though. That's just my own personal opinion. Because what we're gonna do now is we're gonna puntee up with a clear puntee or color, whatever you choose. But I like clear, just saves on expenses. And I'm gonna heat it up and I'm gonna lightly pull it. And you can actually see where those ridges are, where I've rounded it off on the edge, and they're making these like nice, round, clean edges. Now that I like the shape of the leaf, I'm going to detach from the color rod, which was initially my handle, but my new handle is now my clear puntee. I'm going to use the excess color that I've left for myself as the bail loop for my pendant. I have my reverse tweezers here. I'm just using it to press where where I want that bail to be before I go in with my hand torch and just kind of melt in and make smooth where I want that bail to be melted in at before going back in with my reverse tweezers and rounding it out and making the shape that I like with the bail loop. So I like to go back and forth a little bit just to make sure that the hole is the size that I want and that the bail is the shape that I want. And I realize I would really like the bail to be a little more square. So I'm taking the back side of those angled needle nose and pressing it into the marver and just making it nice and square on either side of the shoulder of the bail. And so now I'll go back in, make sure it's nice and round on either side. So because we put deep cuts in this piece of glass, I'm gonna go ahead and heat up the back and the front just to make sure it doesn't crack. Then I'm gonna grab my needle nose pliers. I'm gonna detach it from the clear puntee. Then take my butter knife and go ahead and just make the end of the leaf nice and crisp. And now the leaf pendant is all finished, and we've used 3 of the tools on just this one project. The next project we're making is a flower. We're gonna be using our flathead tweezers and our needle nose tweezers in this project. So the first thing we're gonna do is make a small gather of glass, and this is going to be the color in the center of our flower. And here I'm just cleaning up with the flat nose tweezers the end of this color that I'm going to add as my petals, just because it had a little different consistency. So now that I've cleaned it up, I'm going to add dots of color around the edge of my gather, and those are going to be my petals. And learning the spacing will just come with time, but I like to do 5 myself. That's just my own personal preference. And I'm going to melt them in on the front, on the side, and in the back of each single dot. So I'm going to go around and just do the front of each one, and then the side of each one, and then the back of each one. The reason why you want to make sure that all this is nice and melted in is because you can go through the whole trouble of making it, and if there's a right angle or something's not completely melted in over time or immediately, something can crack, explode, or separate. So just make sure that everything's nice and melted in before you move forward. And now all I'm doing is heating each dot and then lightly pressing it with my flat nose tweezers. I'm making my petal shape. And now you'll have rounded, nice, full petals. Now, just out of curiosity, I'm going to grab my needle nose tweezers and I'm going to take a small bit off the end of each petal to make them more sharp, more elongated. And this is just me playing with the shape of the petal and the style of the flower. And I always recommend trying out new things. And so here's your finished flower, just a different variation of petal than we created with the flat head tweezers. I decided that since we're playing around to go ahead and add some more decoration to the flower, heating up the center of the flower and lightly pushing with my needle nose tweezers to add more depth and more decoration to the flower. And this is the end result of using those 2 tools and just playing around and seeing what we can create. The next tool we're going to use is going to be our full metal butter knife, and what we're going to do is we're going to go into the crevices with it and sharpen up the rounded edges of this lightning bolt. So the entire technique here is just to lightly heat the section of glass that you're trying to make a little bit more clean, a little bit more sharp looking, and then just add a small bit of pressure from your tool and just lightly compress it and allow it to naturally kind of migrate out and away from itself to give it a more sharp appearance. So the next tool we're going to use is our pie or cake server, the one with the serrated edge and the flat edge. So the first thing I'm going to do is play with the serrated edge. I'm going to see what kind of heat and what kind of pressure are going to produce what kind of detail work. And they are super crisp, super clean little rows of dots. And so I think to myself, well, let's see how closely I can lay down these lines of dots horizontally to create a texture in the glass. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to heat and I'm going to press, and I'm going to move down and heat and press until I'm all the way down the entire puck. This is the texture I ended up with just playing around, and I think with a little development it could be a really cool detail tool. The last technique I'm using is using the flat side of the same tool to make guiding lines to cut to make shapes out of flat pucks like the previous video that I did last month. All right, thank you guys so much, and I'll see you next time.